In the dim glow of a flickering lantern, a wizened Maester sat hunched over a tome in the depths of the citadel. His voice, hoarse with age yet rich with wisdom, carried the weight of centuries as he began his tale. Few truly understand the fragility of the threads that bind this world together, he mused, brushing a trembling hand across the worn parchment. Magic, that most elusive of forces, is the thread upon which so much of our history hangs. It shapes not only the lives of kings and queens, but the fate of realms. Yet, one must wonder, what if that thread were severed? What if magic itself vanished from the world of men? The Maester paused, letting his question linger in the air, as if daring the shadows to respond. Then, he turned his gaze to his attentive audience, a group of acolytes eager to learn the hidden truths of the Seven Kingdoms. Our tale begins, as so many do in an age of uncertainty. Magic had always been a fickle ally, its power waxing and waning like the phases of the moon. It was said that the dragons of Valyria, those great beasts of fire and shadow, were born of magic itself. The long night, with its terrors of ice and death, was driven back only through the power of sorcery. Even the faces of the many-faced god, worn by the faceless men, owe their existence to the arcane. But what if, on one fateful day, magic had disappeared from our world entirely? The Maester leaned forward, his expression grave. Let us reflect for a moment on the implications. Without magic, the very heart of Valyria would have crumbled into ash far sooner than it did. The dragons, those magnificent creatures, would never have roamed the skies of Westeros. The wall, that ancient bulwark of ice, would have stood no chance against the terrors it was built to repel. And what of the Stark children? Their direwolves, their destinies entwined with visions and prophecies. How would their paths have changed? His audience shifted uneasily. The room seemed colder now, as if the specter of this alternate history had begun to seep into the present. Consider Daenerys Targaryen, the Maester continued, a queen forged by fire, a breaker of chains. Without her dragons, she would have been little more than a forgotten exile in the far reaches of Essos. Or Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell. What would he have become without the truths revealed by magic, without the prophecy of Azor Ahai? And then, of course, there is the Night King, that ancient horror born of the children of the forest. Without magic, he would never have risen to march upon the realms of men. The Maester leaned back, his gaze distant. The timeline we know is rich with wonders and horrors alike, but in this tale, the wonders fade. The horrors take on a more human form: politics, ambition, betrayal. In a world without magic, the Seven Kingdoms would be no less dangerous, but their battles would be fought with swords alone, not shadow and flame. The flickering lantern cast strange shapes on the walls, like echoes of forgotten battles and unspoken secrets. The Maester closed his tome with a decisive thud. So, let us journey together into this shadowed reflection of our world, he said, his voice soft but commanding. Let us see what might have been had magic abandoned us. Let us ask, what if magic disappeared from Westeros entirely? With those words, the tale began, and the Maester's audience leaned forward, captivated by the possibilities of a world without the arcane. The divergence came on a day that should have been like any other, one where the forces of nature and magic worked unseen, their threads weaving the tapestry of life in Westeros. But on this day, as if the gods themselves had turned their backs, magic faltered. Then it vanished. No sorcerer's incantation, no Maester's curse, no whispered words from the Shadowbinders could explain the event, and yet its effects were immediate and catastrophic. The first to feel it were the dragons. High above the Myrinese skies, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion soared. their great wings slicing through the heavens. Then, as if tethered to the earth by unseen chains, they faltered, their roars of defiance fading into cries of confusion. Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons, stood on the balcony of her pyramid, her heart sinking as Drogon crash-landed into the sands beyond the city walls. His fire sputtered weakly. His once burning eyes dimmed. He was alive, but diminished. Daenerys ran to him, her touch trembling. The bond she felt so fiercely with her children, gone. The ripple spread across the world, silent yet unstoppable. Far to the north, the wall trembled. Its ancient enchantments laid by the children of the forest and reinforced by countless spells disintegrated like threads of a frayed rope. The great ice fortification groaned under its weight, and though it did not collapse, its power to repel the horrors beyond it was no more. The Black Brothers of the Night's Watch stared in terror as the cold winds grew fiercer, more menacing, but eerily mundane. In the depths of Braavos, the faceless men felt the absence keenly. Arya Stark, poised before the pool in the House of Black and White, reached for a face from the wall. She placed it over her own, expecting the familiar pull of transformation. Instead, it was as if she had donned a mere mask. Her own reflection stared back at her in the water's surface, a stark reminder of what had been lost. Jaqen H'ghar's enigmatic smile disappeared, replaced by a look of uncharacteristic confusion. "The many-faced god," he muttered, "has turned away." Beyond the narrow sea, in Korth, the mysterious warlocks of the House of the Undying cried out in despair as their powers ebbed. The blue flames of their magic, ever burning, flickered out. Their once endless halls became little more than stone corridors, the illusions shattered. Even the trees felt it. In the godswood of Winterfell, the face carved into the heart tree no longer wept sap of blood red. Bran Stark, far to the north in the cave of the three-eyed raven, awoke from a vision, clutching his head. The strange weirwood roots around him seemed deadened. The raven himself stared blankly at the boy. "The connection is severed," he whispered. "We are but men now." The chaos that followed was swift. In King's Landing, word reached Cersei Lannister of Daenerys' dragon's sudden weakness. The Queen Regent saw an opportunity. "Send ravens to Euron Greyjoy," she ordered. "Tell him to prepare his fleet. The Dragon Queen is vulnerable." Meanwhile, Jon Snow, at Winterfell, struggled to comprehend what the loss of magic meant. "Without the wall's enchantments, the dead will come," he said to Sansa, "but what will stop them?" Tormund Giantsbane, having come south with the Free Folk, clenched his fists. "We will have to fight as men always have, with steel and grit." But the dead too felt the change. The Night King's eyes, once aglow with an unnatural blue, dimmed. He raised a hand to summon his army of whites, only for them to falter. Yet this did not deter him. If anything, it made him more dangerous, for now he would march south not as an unstoppable force of magic, but as a general of cold death, driven by an unrelenting purpose. Opportunities rose as swiftly as challenges. In the Riverlands, Beric Dondarrion's flaming sword sputtered out as he faced a band of brigands. When the fight was done, he found himself bleeding and near death. Thoros of Myre, his hands trembling, tried to summon the Lord of Light's healing flames, but nothing came. Beric smiled grimly. "Perhaps this is what was meant to be," he said, closing his eyes for what he knew would be the last time. In the east, Melisandre stood upon the shores of Dragonstone, staring at her reflection in the water. Without her powers, her youthful visage began to fade, revealing her true age. Her prayers to Rhaelor went unanswered. She cast her ruby into the waves, a token of her surrender. Yet not all despaired. In the Vale of Arryn, Petyr Baelish smirked as news reached him of the loss of magic. "Good," he muttered. "The playing field is even once more. Let the game begin." The Seven Kingdoms, once a land of prophecy and fire-breathing beasts, now stood on the precipice of a new age. One where the outcomes of battles, schemes, and alliances would be determined by human cunning and steel alone. Yet, even in this diminished world, shadows loomed large. Magic may have disappeared, but ambition, fear, and the thirst for power remained. The loss of the arcane only intensified the struggles to come, setting the stage for a Westeros that would rise, or fall, entirely on the shoulders of its mortal players. The days that followed the vanishing of magic in Westeros were marked by chaos and an eerie quiet, as though the realm itself was mourning the loss of an unseen lifeblood. Where once mystical forces dictated the tides of fate, now human will and cunning became the only tools of survival. The great players of Westeros adjusted their strategies, some seizing the moment as an opportunity, others faltering as their foundations crumbled beneath them. King's Landing, a calculated ambition. In the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister reveled in the news of Daenerys' dragon's diminished power. The Queen of the Seven Kingdoms summoned her advisors and ordered an immediate offensive. If the so-called Dragon Queen is mortal, then she can be destroyed, she declared. Jaime Lannister, now estranged from his sister, urged caution. Magic may be gone, but her army remains strong. The Unsullied and the Dothraki are not to be underestimated. But Cersei, emboldened by Euron Greyjoy's fleet and the might of the Golden Company, paid no heed. Euron, ever opportunistic, demanded his prize, marriage to the Queen. Cersei toyed with him, dangling promises but withholding commitment. "Prove your worth," she told him, sending him on a mission to cut off Daenerys' supply lines in the Narrow Sea, Winterfell, preparing for the inevitable. In the north, Jon Snow grappled with the implications of the Wall's diminished power. The Night King may be weakened, Jon mused, but he is not defeated. His army will march south, and we must be ready. The Free Folk, under Tormund Giantsbane, joined forces with the northern houses to fortify Winterfell. The Stark bannermen, led by Lyanna Mormont, rallied to Jon's call, though whispers of dissent grew louder. Sansa Stark, ever the pragmatist, urged Jon to focus on consolidating alliances rather than preparing for an immediate war. The North stands united for now, but loyalty wavers in times of uncertainty, she warned. Arya Stark, restless and haunted by the failure of her faceless men training, took it upon herself to act as Winterfell's shadowy protector, eliminating those she deemed traitorous. Essos, Daenerys' struggle for survival. Far across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen faced a crisis unlike any she had known. Her dragons, the symbols of her power and birthright, were now vulnerable. Drogon, once untouchable, required constant care, his fire diminished to mere embers. "Without my dragons, am I still the breaker of chains?" Daenerys asked Tyrion Lannister. The hand of the Queen, ever the diplomat, sought to reassure her. "You are more than your dragons. You are a leader who inspires loyalty. But we must act wisely. The loss of magic changes everything." Grey Worm and the Unsullied fortified Meereen, fearing a resurgence of rebellion. The Dothraki, restless without the thrill of conquest, began to question Daenerys' leadership. It was Daario Naharis who took it upon himself to quell dissent among their ranks, though his loyalty to Daenerys began to waver as well. The Vale, Littlefinger's calculations. Petyr Baelish saw the loss of magic as an opportunity to advance his own ambitions. With the Knights of the Vale at his command and no arcane forces to interfere, he sought to manipulate events in his favor. The game is simpler now, he mused. a game of men, not monsters. Littlefinger's first move was to exploit the growing tensions between the North and the South. He traveled to Riverrun, seeking to ally with Edmure Tully. The Lannisters are distracted, and the Starks are isolated, Littlefinger told Edmure. Together, we can rebuild the Riverlands and reclaim our place in the realm. The Night King's march. Despite his diminished powers, the Night King remained a threat. His army of whites, though smaller, pressed southward, their movements more methodical and deliberate. The living underestimated him at their peril, for though he no longer wielded magic, his strategic mind remained unparalleled. At Hardhome, the remnants of the Free Folk fell to his forces, and he began to raise new undead from their ranks. The Iron Islands, Euron's ambition. Euron Greyjoy, emboldened by his fleet successes, launched a brutal campaign against Daenerys' forces in Essos. He captured key ports, cutting off her supply lines and stranding her armies. However, his hubris led him to overreach. While attacking a small coastal town, he encountered Yara Greyjoy, who had rallied loyal Ironborn to her side. In a surprise naval ambush, Yara struck a decisive blow, crippling Euron's fleet and reclaiming her position as a contender for the Salt Throne. King's Landing, Seeds of Betrayal. As the war raged on, Cersei's court began to fracture. Qyburn, once her most loyal advisor, grew wary of her increasingly erratic decisions. He sought an alliance with Varys, who remained a ghostly presence, pulling strings from the shadows. Meanwhile, Jaime Lannister, disillusioned with his sister's tyranny, began to plot his departure. Clashes and consequences. The first major battle of the New Age took place in the Riverlands, where Daenerys' weakened forces clashed with the Golden Company. Without her dragons at full strength, the battle was grueling and costly. However, Jon Snow arrived with reinforcements from the north, tipping the scales in her favor. Their uneasy alliance was tested when Jon confronted Daenerys about her ruthlessness in dealing with deserters among her ranks. The Brotherhood, without banners, now bereft of the Lord of Light's guidance, played a pivotal role in the conflict. They became mercenaries, selling their skills to the highest bidder. Gendry, wielding Robert Baratheon's warhammer, rose as an unexpected leader among them, determined to carve out a legacy of his own. Essos, the Red Priest's decline. The disappearance of magic left the Red Priests of R'hllor in disarray. Kinvara, the High Priestess, called for a gathering in Volantis to seek answers. The conclave concluded that the loss of magic was not a punishment, but a test of faith. Divisions arose, with some priests abandoning their cause entirely, while others, like Melisandre, sought new ways to interpret their mission, building toward the climax. The shifting alliances, betrayals, and power struggles of this magicless world continued to escalate. The balance of power shifted constantly, with no clear victor in sight. The loss of magic had leveled the playing field, but it had also unleashed chaos. As the story barreled toward its climax, the characters faced impossible choices, their actions setting the stage for the fateful events to come. In this new Westeros, where magic no longer dictated destiny, the stakes had never been higher. The Seven Kingdoms stood on the brink, and the question lingered: who would rise to seize the throne, and at what cost? The climax of this tale unfolds in the shadow of the Godswood in Winterfell, where a final, desperate meeting of the realm's fractured leaders takes place. The once frigid sanctuary, now surrounded by whispers of uncertainty rather than mystical whispers, becomes the stage for a turning point that will shape Westeros forever. The Gathering Storm. Jon Snow, bearing the scars of countless battles and the weight of his true lineage, stands before the leaders of the Seven Kingdoms. His voice is steady but resolute as he declares, "We cannot fight among ourselves any longer." The Night King marches south, and if we don't stand together, we will all fall. Daenerys Targaryen, stripped of her dragon's former invincibility, faces the grim reality of her diminishing influence. Her unsullied armor glints in the torchlight as she challenges Jon. And who should lead this united front, Jon? You, the so-called rightful heir? Or me, the breaker of chains who has bled for this realm? The room erupts into chaos. Sansa Stark steps forward, her voice cutting through the noise. This isn't about who sits on the Iron Throne. It's about survival. Her words temporarily quell the bickering, but the tension remains palpable. An unexpected betrayal. As the lords and ladies deliberate, a shadow moves through the godswood. Arya Stark, ever watchful, senses something amiss. She slips into the shadows, her dagger at the ready. Moments later, she uncovers a treacherous plot. One of the attending lords, bribed by Cersei, plans to assassinate Jon to plunge the North into chaos. Arya's discovery comes too late to prevent the attempt. As the meeting reaches a crescendo, the assassin strikes, plunging a blade toward Jon's chest. Jon narrowly escapes the fatal blow, but the attempt throws the gathering into disarray. Daenerys seizes the moment to assert her dominance, accusing the northern lords of treachery and declaring herself the only rightful leader. This is what your so-called unity looks like, Jon: betrayal and bloodshed. The Night King's arrival. The chaos is short-lived, for the enemy does not wait. The Night King, leading a smaller but no less fearsome army, arrives at Winterfell's doorstep. His piercing gaze locks onto the godswood as if sensing the mortal leader's desperation. Jon rallies the defenders, shouting, "To the walls! We fight together, or we die alone." For a moment, the division among the lords is forgotten as the living face the dead. A last stand against darkness. The battle is fierce and unrelenting. Without the dragon's fire to hold the line, the defenders rely on siege weapons, flaming arrows, and sheer determination. Arya leads a group of scouts into the crypts, where they uncover an ancient weapon, a cache of Valyrian steel swords hidden by Bran Stark's foresight. As the Night King breaches the walls, Jon confronts him directly. Their clash is brutal, a dance of steel and fury. But this is no simple duel. It is a battle of wills, a fight for the soul of Westeros, a sacrifice and a twist. As the Night King gains the upper hand, Daenerys makes a fateful decision. Realizing the battle cannot be won without a bold act, she commands Drogon, now weakened but still fearsome, to charge the Night King. The dragon's attack momentarily disrupts the enemy, but it comes at a cost. Drogon falls, his final roar echoing through the battlefield. In the chaos, Bran Stark, seated beneath the weirwood tree, reveals the truth to Sansa. The Night King's strength lies not in his army, but in his knowledge of death. If we deny him the dead, he will falter. Sansa takes this revelation to Jon, who realizes what must be done. The Night King's defeat Arya, wielding a Valyrian steel blade, delivers the final blow to the Night King in a daring ambush. Exploiting a moment of vulnerability created by Jon and Daenerys' combined efforts. The icy specter shatters into shards, his army crumbling with him. The battlefield falls silent, the dead no longer moving, but the cost is clear. Daenerys, grievously wounded in the final charge, succumbs to her injuries. Her last words to Jon are both haunting and hopeful. Build a world better than this one. The aftermath. As the sun rises over the bloodied snow of Winterfell, the survivors gather. The Night King's demise has ended the immediate threat, but the fractures within the realm remain. Jon takes up Daenerys' mantle, vowing to honor her vision while forging his own path. In this climactic moment, the fate of Westeros teeters on the edge of a new beginning. one born not of magic but of human resilience, sacrifice, and hope. Resolution. The battlefield lies quiet now, the snow littered with the remnants of the living and the dead. Winterfell, though battered and scarred, stands. Survivors gather in the great hall, their faces marked by exhaustion, grief, and a flicker of hope. Jon Snow, with bloodied hands and a heavy heart, addresses the lords and warriors who remain. His voice carries the weight of loss, but also determination. The Night King is gone, but his shadow lingers. We've won a battle, but the war for the soul of Westeros is far from over. His words echo in the hall, sparking both relief and trepidation among those assembled. Sansa Stark, ever the pragmatic leader, takes her place beside Jon. With a voice tempered by the wisdom of hard lessons, she speaks of rebuilding, unity, and the sacrifices that must not be forgotten. The North remembers, and so must we. This victory is not an end, but a beginning. Wounds that cannot be mended. In the wake of Daenerys' sacrifice, her loyal followers face a crossroads. Grey Worm and the Unsullied, though leaderless, vow to honor her memory. They choose to leave Westeros, seeking a new purpose far from the conflicts that consumed their queen. Tyrion Lannister, haunted by the choices that led to this moment, steps down from his role as Hand of the Queen. "I've played my part in too many tragedies," he tells Jon. "Perhaps it's time I learn what it means to live without the weight of crowns and thrones." He sets out to wander, a broken man in search of redemption. Arya Stark, having once again saved Westeros with her unmatched courage, finds herself restless. She bids farewell to her family, setting sail for lands uncharted, a lone wolf seeking new horizons. Bran Stark, the three-eyed raven, reflects on the events with an air of detachment. To Sansa, he offers a cryptic warning. The threads of fate have been altered, but the loom of time never rests. There will always be another storm on the horizon. A shattered realm. The political landscape of Westeros remains fragile. With Daenerys gone and Cersei's influence eradicated, no clear ruler emerges to claim the Iron Throne. Jon, though a rightful heir, rejects the notion of rule. "I've seen enough blood spilled for a seat of power. Let the realm choose its path." The lords and ladies of Westeros convene a great council to decide the future of the Seven Kingdoms. Sansa secures the North's independence, ensuring its people will never again be beholden to southern politics. As for the Iron Throne itself, its very existence is called into question. A world without magic. The destruction of the Night King signals more than just the end of the long night. It marks the fading of magic from the world. The dragons are gone. The weirwoods no longer whisper with the same potency, and even the visions of the three-eyed raven grow dim. For some, this is a blessing. The absence of magic promises a world where human ambition, not supernatural forces, dictates the course of history. For others, it is a loss, a dimming of wonder and the mysteries that once defined their world. A closing reflection. As the sun sets on Winterfell, Jon stands alone in the Godswood, staring at the ancient heart tree. Its branches, now barren, seem to mirror the state of the realm. Stripped of its mystical essence but still standing. The Maester's voice, narrating this tale, offers a final thought. The world was forever changed when magic left it, but change is the way of life. Perhaps it is not the power we wield, but the choices we make that truly shape the destiny of men. With the weight of history behind him and an uncertain future ahead, Jon walks away from the tree, fading into the twilight. The Seven Kingdoms, though fractured, stand on the precipice of a new era, one defined by human will alone. And so, this chapter ends, leaving the reader or viewer to ponder, without the crutch of magic, can the people of Westeros forge a lasting peace, or will the cycle of conflict and ambition begin anew? The Maester closes the ancient tome, its weathered pages brimming with tales of power, sacrifice, and the fragility of destiny. The candlelight in the chamber flickers, casting long shadows on the stone walls of the citadel. He looks up, his voice measured and contemplative. And so, we come to the end of this tale, an alternate history of Westeros, a world where magic faded into whispers and legends. What remains is a land scarred by ambition, but perhaps stronger for its struggles. Yet, one cannot help but wonder, was the loss of magic a boon or a curse? Did it free the realm from forces beyond its understanding, or did it strip away the very wonder that made the impossible achievable? The Maester's gaze shifts, his tone growing softer yet heavier with meaning. History teaches us that the choices of men are the true architects of their fate, but it also warns us of the price of those choices. What if Daenerys had lived? What if Jon had claimed the throne? What if the Night King's shadow had never risen at all? Each decision creates a ripple, 1,000 threads woven into the tapestry of time. Yet, even the most carefully crafted tapestry can unravel with a single pull. He leans forward, inviting the listener to reflect. So, I leave you with this question. In a world devoid of magic, where only the wills and desires of men remain, will the Seven Kingdoms ever find peace? Or will the echoes of past ambitions doom them to repeat their darkest chapters? The chamber falls silent, the weight of the question lingering in the air as the candle burns low.